Mist and bells at St. Solène. Hey guys, tonight we're traveling back in time to a place where the air always seems to hang a little thicker, not because of heat or rain, but because of silence. The kind of silence that has weight, that fills stone halls and wraps itself around you like a heavy wool cloak. You're waking up inside the abbey of St. Solène, a forgotten monastery deep in the northern countryside, tucked far from any village where even the birds don't sing before dawn. Everything smells of damp stone and candle wax, and the only sound is the faint crackling of a fire someone rekindled hours ago. You shift under your linen blanket. You know it's morning. Not by the sun, the mist outside is too thick for that, but because the bell above the chapel has just tolled its first note. It echoes across the stone walls like a distant voice calling you not to hurry but to rise. Slowly, carefully, like everything else in this place. You probably wouldn't survive doing this back in the day. Not the cold, not the vows, and definitely not the discipline. But here in this story, you don't have to. You just get to be here and feel what it might have been like. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. And if your day was full of deadlines and noise, take this time to forget it all. Let your mind wander, float, and dream a little. This story isn't urgent. It's just here for you to enjoy and rest alongside. May your sleep be deep and your dreams be lovely. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You pull your veil tighter around your face, the wool scratchy but warm. You move through the cloister with practiced steps, slow, quiet, like a shadow passing between worlds. The abbey isn't awake yet. Not fully, just the bell tower, and the sisters who tend the morning fires. You're one of them. Outside, the garden is still black with dew. The herbs there won't be picked until noon after the mist has lifted, if it ever does. Some days it clings until vespers. St. Solène has always been like this, quiet, out of reach, and untouched by news or politics. The world beyond the walls feels mythical. Villages, kings, even the Pope, all distant, all part of some other tale. But you are here. You live by the bell, by the chants, by the rules, and by the silence. Today, though, something is different. There's a sound you don't recognize: hoofbeats, faint but steady. Unusual this early. Visitors don't come unannounced. Pilgrims are rare, couriers rarer still. You pause under the archway and wait. A moment later, the main gate creaks open. A horse, black and glistening with sweat, stands in the arch. Its rider wears a robe, but not like yours. His is travel-worn, belted not just with rope, but with leather, and under the robe you glimpse armor. No, not a full breastplate. Just remnants, a shoulder guard, a vambrace scratched and dull, a cross painted in faded red. A monk, but not from here. One of the sisters approaches him, cautious but kind. She reads the seal he carries. Her eyes widen. You can't hear what she says, but the gate closes behind him, and that's how he enters your world. He is introduced during morning meal. His name, though no one repeats it more than once, is Brother Theon. He's from the southern front near Avignon. He's been reassigned here to assist in the restoration of damaged manuscripts. The sisters murmur, not in disapproval, but in curiosity. He bows, doesn't speak unless spoken to. His face is partially hidden by his hood. His hands, when you notice them, are not like those of a scribe, calloused in odd places, as if they've held something heavier than a quill. A sword, maybe? You look away quickly. You shouldn't be thinking of swords. Later that morning, the prioress finds you in the scriptorium. You will assist Brother Theon in cataloging the field psalters, she says, without offering explanation. You nod as you always do. You wonder what a man like that might know of field psalters hymns written by warriors on the move, scratched into bark, or wax, or stitched into armor linings. Songs meant for marching, prayers shouted over the clash of metal. You know the text well? You've copied many yourself, but you've never worked alongside someone who might have sung them for real. When you meet him again, it's in the West Archive, a vaulted room that smells of ink mold and beeswax. You greet him softly. He responds just as softly. He doesn't smile, but his voice, low, gravelly, with an accent from a region you can't place, carries something old. You work side by side for hours. No words. Only pages. But just once, when your sleeve brushes his arm, he flinches. Not in disgust, but like someone touched a scar. You don't apologize, and he doesn't pull away. You simply keep writing. And the bell tolls again. Evening now. You light the lantern, and for a moment in the flicker of the flame you see his eyes. Not cruel, not cold, just tired, and full of stories you know he'll never be allowed to tell. The warrior monk arrives. You see him again the next day, this time in the chapel. He is not kneeling like the others. He stands near the back, still unbending his hands clasped behind him as if he's waiting for a signal only he can hear. The morning light filters through stained glass, painting his robe in fractured reds and violets. His eyes do not lift toward the crucifix. They stay low as if searching for something on the stone floor. You wonder if he's ever truly prayed inside a chapel before, or if all his prayers were shouted from behind battlements. You move past him without a word, but your silence feels louder now. Later that day, you find a new table waiting in the archive, cleared and lit by a south-facing window. A quiet spot, and beside it 2 chairs. One has always been yours. The other is his. He enters without ceremony, without the usual bowed head or muttered blessing. He simply nods and takes his place beside you. Your quills scratch in tandem. 2 scribes, 1 song. The field psalter is more than just music. It is a record of pain, a battlefield diary told through breath and blood. Many of the pages you copy are torn or stained. Some bear the marks of rain or ash. One even smells faintly of smoke. As you transcribe, you pause on a particular line. Domine non sum dignus, sed loquere verbo. Lord, I am not worthy, but speak the word. A simple chant, but one of your favorites. You hum it softly without meaning to. To your surprise, he joins you. His voice is rough, cracked, but sure. He knows the melody. You stop humming. He continues just a few more notes before trailing off. He clears his throat and returns to his writing. You do the same, but something has shifted. Now the silence between you hums with more than just candle smoke. That evening, you are sent to deliver extra parchment to the East Wing. On your way back, you pass the stables. You never linger here to smell the noise, but something draws your eye. He's there, brushing his horse. Not in a rush, not muttering prayers, just moving slowly. One hand on the animal's flank, the other dragging the comb through its mane. You notice the horse is blind in one eye, and yet it leans into his touch like a child into a lullaby. He notices you watching. He doesn't speak. He just nods again, that silent, subtle greeting. You return it, and keep walking. But you wonder, why would a monk keep a battle horse? And why does it seem like that animal is the only thing he's allowed to love? Later that night in the scriptorium, you study his hands again. They do not tremble like yours, but they bear stories. A scar above the knuckle, a missing tip of his left ring finger, burns old ones on the underside of his wrist, and ink-stained fingernails that don't seem entirely new to the trade. You wonder when the sword left his hand, and how long the pen has felt foreign. He looks up, catching your gaze. You look down, immediately heat blooming in your chest. He returns to his parchment, but in that moment you realize you're not alone in your wondering. He's studying you too. The days pass. You work in rhythm now. You match his pace. He adapts to yours. You share ink. You share margins. Sometimes you correct his spelling gently. He takes it without pride. Sometimes he hums under his breath. Low war songs turned soft. You don't recognize the words, but you know their weight. One afternoon he arrives with a limp. You say nothing, but you glance. He offers only an old memory and keeps working. Then, one morning, a bundle appears on your desk. Wrapped in linen, unmarked. You unfold it. Inside a quill. Not one of yours. Carved from a feather you've never seen. Dark blue. Almost black. Sleek. Balanced. And beside it a sprig of thyme, fresh. No note. You know where it came from, but you say nothing. Just place the quill beside your inkwell. And press the thyme between pages of the Psalter. That evening during Compline, you catch his eye across the chapel. He is no longer hiding behind his hood. His head is bowed. But you know he's watching you. Not in hunger. Not in sin. But with a kind of reverence you didn't expect. And it makes your hands shake. Because you've spent your whole life trying not to be seen. And now someone sees you. Not as a sister. Not as a scribe. But as something still growing. Still reaching. Still burning quietly beneath layers of wool and rule. Scriptorium of glances and ink. The scriptorium feels warmer now. Not because of the brazier in the corner, though it glows faintly this morning, but because something in the air has softened. It used to be a room of rigid lines of quiet duty. Now it carries something else. A hush that isn't silence. A closeness that hums just beneath the surface. You arrive before he does. As always, you prepare the parchment, trim the nib of your quill, and set out 2 cups of warm cider. You don't know if he likes cider. He's never said. But he drinks it each time without question. Without thanks either, but not out of rudeness, as if it's simply understood. He arrives without a word, takes his place, and the day begins. You copy the psalter in rhythm. He matches your pace now almost perfectly. Sometimes his script slants too sharply, or the ink pools unevenly battle scars in calligraphic form, but it no longer matters. You've stopped correcting him. There's something more sacred than precision now. Today he speaks first. Have you ever written something you didn't mean to? You pause your quill hovering just above the parchment. It's a strange question for someone sworn to accuracy. You turn to him slowly. Yes. He nods as if he expected that answer. And then after a moment, me too. You don't ask what it was. You don't need to. Because you know what he's really asking. Can mistakes also be sacred? You dip your quill again and keep writing. There are moments now more frequent when your fingers brush. When the pages you pass to each other linger just a heartbeat longer than they should. When the margin notes become strange. Not the usual corrections, but small symbols. Dots. Spirals. A line that ends in a curl. You begin replying in kind. Not in words, but in shape. A language neither Latin nor French. A language of you and him. One morning you find your chair pulled slightly out. A small thing. But it means he arrived first. And waited. And you don't know why that warms you more than the brazier ever could. The scriptorium windows face west. In the late afternoon, the light shifts just enough to catch the gold in his hair. You never noticed before. It's mostly dark like ash, but there are streaks of warmth that glint like firelight. You wonder if anyone's ever told him. You wonder if you ever could. The psalter grows, line by line, verse by verse. It's beautiful now, not just because of the script, but because of the care. It carries fingerprints, a smudge of wax, the shadow of a forgotten flower petal between pages. It's no longer just a book. It's a shared breath. One afternoon, he leans back and stretches. You steal a glance just long enough to see the outline of a scar beneath his robe. Not a small one. Long, diagonal, faded but unmistakable. Poitiers, he says quietly. You blink. The battle, he nods. 10 years ago. You don't ask what he did there. You don't ask whom he killed. You simply say you survived. And he looks at you, really looks for the first time. Not with curiosity, but with recognition. Sometimes he brings stories. Not full ones, just fragments. A meal eaten in the snow. A prayer whispered over a friend's grave. A girl who gave him a ribbon before he rode to war. I lost it, he says almost sadly. What color was it, you ask? Red, he replies, like blood, like sin. You don't say anything. But that night you place a red ribbon inside the binding of the psalter. He doesn't mention it, but he never removes it either. Your work becomes slower now, not because you're tired, but because neither of you wants to finish. Each page turned is one less reason to sit together, to share silence, to exist beside one another in a world that forbids everything you feel. But you keep going, because what else can you do? You're not lovers, not friends, not even equals, just two souls drifting close in the margins of a holy book. That evening in the candlelight, you write a single line at the bottom of a page. Et si veritas arderet ego arderem cum ea. And if truth were to burn, I would burn with it. You don't sign it. You don't need to. The next morning, you find a new line beneath it written in his hand. Tu es flamma mea. You are my flame. You press your hand to the parchment. The ink is still drying. And for a moment, the scriptorium doesn't feel like a place of rules anymore. It feels like a chapel. A confessional, a promise, one you've never said aloud. But now it's written, and nothing written is ever truly lost. Time between the pages. There's a silence deeper than vows, not the hush of cloisters or the stillness of prayer, but the breath between two people who are not supposed to know each other. The quiet that grows in the cracks of walls built to keep hearts apart. It's the silence you walk with now. You carry a bundle of texts in your arms as you make your way toward the scriptorium. The morning sun is struggling through the clouds again, casting a milky gold light across the floor. It smells faintly of beeswax and wet wool, but also something new. When you open the scriptorium door, it's already there. A sprig of thyme, fresh, green, laid gently on your chair. You pause, then pick it up, rub it lightly between your fingers. The scent bursts out sharp and clean and ancient. A smell that doesn't belong in ink-stained rooms, but in open fields and herb gardens. You glance around, but he's not here yet. You don't place the thyme on the desk. You tuck it gently into the inside fold of your veil and sit. He enters a few moments later, not saying anything, but his gaze flicks quickly to the chair and then to your veil. Just for a heartbeat, but he sees that you've kept it. The work begins as usual, but your hands tremble slightly more than usual. Today, the psalter you're copying shifts tone. The verses speak not of war, but of waiting, of longing, of silence broken only by the sound of wind through stone. You write carefully, tracing each letter with reverence. Beside you, he hums a soft melody. Not a chant, something older. A folk tune maybe remembered from another life. The tune lingers between you like incense, thin, invisible, but clinging to the space between breath and thought. You don't hum along, but you remember it. Later that night, you'll hum it alone. At midday, the sunlight cuts through the west window in a slant so clear that the dust looks like smoke. You both pause your writing, blink into it, and for a moment, just sit. No script, no pages, just the sound of wind tapping at the shutters. He speaks first, not with words, but with motion. He slides a piece of parchment toward you, folded. You unfold it slowly. Inside is not a psalm, but a drawing faint, inked quickly. It's time. The same shape as the sprig he left this morning. Under it in Latin, Meminite in silentio. I remember you in the silence. You trace the drawing with your finger, but say nothing. Then on the bottom margin, you add your own reply. Et ego te in herbis simplicibus. Underscore, and I remember you in humble herbs. You fold it once more and slide it back. You don't exchange looks, but you both smile faint, invisible things as you return to your writing. The next day, the time is gone from your veil, but in its place, you tuck a pressed violet from the chapel garden. You leave it on the corner of his desk before he arrives. He doesn't mention it, but later that evening, you see it again, pressed between the pages of his psalter. The garden behind the chapel is meant for the apothecary for mint sage feverfew. Plants that heal, not ones that speak. But now you start walking through it more often. At first, it's coincidence. You fetching water, he fetching firewood, you passing through to clear your head. But then one day you stop walking. And wait, he appears not long after, a small linen pouch in hand. He hands it to you wordlessly. Inside, thyme, lavender, and 3 small dried rose petals. You don't speak. You just close your hand around the pouch. And stay. There's a bench near the garden wall where the sun lingers longest. It's cracked, covered in moss, and rarely used by anyone but birds. Now it becomes yours, and his. You don't sit close, but you sit together. Once he tells you about a field he fought in, not in blood, but in frost. The ground so frozen they couldn't bury their dead. We sang instead, he says, and then nothing more. You don't ask him to continue. You just sit with him until the sun slips behind the stones. At night, you dream of time growing wild inside the chapel. In cracks between the pews, around the altar, between your fingers. You wake with the scent still in your nostrils, and wonder how much longer you can keep pretending it means nothing. In the scriptorium, he writes slower now, more carefully, each letter a choice, each verse a memory. Sometimes he stops entirely and simply stares at the ink drying on the page. You do the same. Neither of you has said anything beyond the work, beyond the herbs. But everything else, every look, every gift, every silence is louder than confession. This morning there's no thyme on your chair, but there is a single word scratched into the edge of his desk. Fidelis, faithful. You run your fingers over it, barely touching, and wonder faithful to what? Your vows, or each other when fingers brush. It happens during a moment so small you almost miss it. You're reaching for the same scroll. He reaches too. His hand brushes yours. It's not dramatic, not prolonged. Just skin grazing skin, knuckle to knuckle. A heartbeat's worth of warmth. But in a place where even a glance can carry weight, that one moment crashes through your chest like thunder. He doesn't apologize. He doesn't flinch. He simply lets the touch pass through the silence like incense and returns to his writing. But now your hands feel different, alive, remembered. You try not to look at him. You try to steady your breath. But your heart has begun to write its own psalter, and the words are no longer yours to control. That evening during Vespers, your lips move through the chants without thought. Your voice is steady, but your mind is somewhere else, entirely back at the table, where skin met skin in the smallest act of defiance. He's in the same row a few paces down. You don't look at him, but you feel his presence like candlelight. You begin to notice your hands more often, the way your fingers curl around the quill, the way they tremble slightly when he leans too close. The way they press against the parchment when your thoughts wander too far. They remember him. One afternoon, you catch his gaze lingering, not on your face, but on your hands, as they write, as they pour ink into form. His eyes soften not in desire, but in reverence, as though he's watching a miracle. You don't say anything, but you slow your writing just enough to let him watch a little longer. The air in the scriptorium has changed. It isn't warmer, but heavier, like rain waiting behind clouds. You don't speak of it, neither of you do, but you begin to move differently. You lean closer, past scrolls with fingertips brushing instead of palms. You hold the same candle over parchment and your shoulders touch. And when they do, neither of you move. One morning, he arrives before you and lights the lanterns. You walk in to find the scriptorium already glowing. On your desk is a fresh sprig of lavender. Pressed beneath it is a line written in his hand. If our hands speak, let them not lie. You read it twice. Then again, you don't smile, but your hands do. The next time they brush, it's not accidental. You're both reaching for the same binding thread. Your fingers meet, but this time you don't retreat. Neither does he. Your hands stay, pressed lightly together over the linen cord skin, warm against skin, no witnesses but dust and ink and God. You don't look at each other, but your breathing changes, like the moment you know a storm has come even before the rain touches ground. That night your dreams change, no longer distant or soft. Now they are full of heat. Not lust but light, firelight. You dream of his hands wrapped around yours, guiding them not in sin but in song. You wake with your palm open beside you on the blanket, as if waiting for someone who never arrived. You begin to memorize the lines of his fingers, the way he holds his quill, the way his thumb traces the edge of the parchment before turning it, the way his hands rest when he's thinking not curled or clenched but open, always open, as if they are ready to carry something heavy or someone fragile. You begin to write slower, deliberately, so that your fingers linger when you hand him pages. Sometimes he catches on, sometimes he doesn't. But when he does, when your fingers touch and he doesn't let go, the world stills. The candles stop flickering. The wind stops pushing at the shutters. Even the bell seems to pause mid-chime, because nothing exists but skin and breath and the memory of being human, not holy. One afternoon, he drops a scroll. You kneel to help. Your heads are inches apart. You can feel his breath near your cheek. He whispers, "This is not what we swore." You whisper back, "I know." And still you reach out and take his hand in yours. Just for a moment, then let go. That night you kneel in the chapel alone, not in guilt, but in grief, because you have tasted something you are not allowed to keep. And it was beautiful, and it is gone. But the next morning when you return to the scriptorium, he is already there, his hand resting on your chair. Waiting, not for permission, but for you. Confession without a priest. You do not speak of it, not directly. There is no corner in the abbey for this kind of confession. No stall where a heart like yours can whisper truths it should not feel. You walk through the halls like a woman whose body no longer fits her soul, brushing against cold stone, listening for an answer that never comes. But the answer is already beside you. In the scriptorium, he does not greet you with words, only with the same hand resting near yours. Not touching, not needing to. That's the new language now, a nearness more powerful than voice. Later, as you catalog the illuminated margins of an old prayer book, he breaks the silence, quietly, so that only you can hear. "I was not always a monk," he says. "You know this. Everyone knows this." But he says it like a secret. You glance at him, unsure what he wants you to reply. He continues, "I've knelt before kings. I've buried brothers in snow. I've slept with a sword under my pillow for years." You nod. And now, he hesitates. "Then now I sleep with a psalter." You smile faintly and say, "I sleep with silence." He looks at you then long and hard, and that gaze is its own confession. That night you visit the chapel after curfew. Your feet move quietly across the stone, each step an act of defiance and devotion. The candles are mostly out save for one still flickering near the Virgin statue. You sit on the back pew, alone, waiting, until he arrives, not through the main hall, but from the side passage. He walks like someone who knows these walls too well, like someone who is already committed to whatever happens next. He does not speak. You do not stand. He sits beside you, both of you facing forward, not daring to look. You say barely above a whisper, "Is this sin?" His voice is low, ragged. "I don't know." Silence. Then he adds, "But it doesn't feel like one." His hand finds yours in the shadows. It does not grip. It simply rests palm to palm. You feel every scar, every rough edge, but it's the warmth that undoes you. A warmth you haven't known since childhood. Since before vows, before rules, before you gave yourself over to stone and silence. And now you are torn between sacred duty and sacred longing. Historians still argue whether nuns in the 15th century truly obeyed their vows of chastity. You murmur, as if quoting a distant book. He chuckles under his breath. They probably wrote that with a quill like yours. Or yours, you add. He squeezes your hand gently. And then lets go. The next day your hands don't tremble. They move steadily across the page, writing a verse that speaks of gardens of rivers of limbs intertwined in Eden. The Psalter never names Eve, but today you do. You write her name in the margin just once. Eve. And across from it later in his hand appears a single word. Adam. And below that not exile, just choice. The following evening you both find yourselves in the old herb cellar. You'd gone to fetch dried marigold. He's some cloth for binding. The room is tight, damp, lit only by a tiny oil lamp. You nearly collide in the doorway. This time he doesn't back away. This time neither do you. You stand there, heart-thundering hands half raised until he speaks. I fear I've broken something sacred. Your reply comes before you can think maybe it needed breaking. He exhales, as if he's been waiting to hear those words for years. Then you feel it. Not his lips, not yet, but his breath brushing your cheek like prayer. I think of you in the hours between bells, he says. You close your eyes, and I dream of you in the ones after. Stillness. Your lips do not touch, but they tremble in unison. That is your kiss, the one you are allowed, for now. Hey. Later back in your cell, you trace your fingers across your palm where his hand once lay. The memory is still there. Ink stains, heat, hope. You kneel beside your bed and pray. But this time you do not ask for strength. You ask for mercy, and for one more hour beside him. In the days that follow, you stop asking why. You simply let it be. You still copy psalms, still chant, still serve in the chapel. But your heart beats differently now. It's no longer a metronome for the rule. It's a compass, and it points to him. Every time, garden walls and watching eyes. The herb garden is where you first let yourself believe it might be real. It is where stone gives way to soil, where the scent of rosemary and sage is stronger than incense, where the walls are low enough that the sky feels near and yet high enough that secrets can live safely in their shadows. You've both begun to meet here more often, sometimes by accident, sometimes not. You always bring something for the apothecary, a bundle of feverfew, a small pouch of lavender, a basket of dried rose hips. He brings no excuse, just himself. And that is more than enough. Today the sun is soft, the garden is quiet. You're pruning the thyme when you hear the rustle behind you. He doesn't announce himself, he never does. But you feel him before you see him. He stands beside you now, not saying a word. You pass him a pair of shears. He takes them without looking at you, then kneels to the marigolds. 2 monastics in the dirt. 2 lives bending under the weight of rules neither of you wrote. Your hands brush again, this time in the soil over roots and stems. His hand lingers. So does yours. And when you both pull away, it's slower than it should be. You don't speak, but something new has bloomed in that moment. Not a flower, but a quiet urgency. A kind of hunger that no amount of silence can suppress. There are eyes in the abbey. You begin to feel them more. The other sisters speak in lowered voices now. The old sacristan glances at your corner of the chapel with narrowed eyes. The abbess calls you to tend to the infirmary more often, as if pulling you away from the scriptorium might ease something she can't name. They don't say it aloud, but you feel it, the weight of being watched. You change your patterns. You meet in the garden only during high sun when others are napping or scattered. You keep space between your bodies when walking down halls. You avoid entering the chapel together even by chance. But even these adjustments feel like betrayal. Not of God, but of the truth you've come to carry, the quiet, impossible truth of wanting someone you should not want. One evening in the far corner of the garden, you sit beneath the pear tree. You used to sit here alone. Now there are always 2 indentations in the dirt. He arrives carrying a book, not a psalter, but poetry. He opens it between you, and you read together. Words not meant for monks or nuns. Words meant for lovers. Come into the garden, Maud, for the black bat night has flown. He reads softly, each line landing like a dropped coin in your chest. When he stops, you finish the verse for him from memory. He looks at you, and there's something in his eyes that feels almost afraid, as if you too have memorized a part of him. And that knowledge is dangerous. That night you hear footsteps outside your cell. They pause, then continue. You do not sleep for hours. not out of guilt, but fear not of punishment, but of being torn from something you didn't ask for, but now cannot give up. The next morning, he isn't in the scriptorium. Not at first. You sit alone, heart-pounding fingers hovering over parchment that will not accept ink. When he does arrive, he brings nothing with him, just himself. And a whispered warning, they're watching. You nod. I know. You both write that day, but it is not music that fills the room. It is tension. And beneath it, something else. Determination? Later that week, during a morning of heavy fog, you meet behind the herb wall. The world is soft and gray. You cannot see 10 steps ahead, but you find each other anyway. You stand closer than ever, and he says nothing. Just takes your hand. You look up. His eyes are not afraid anymore, only tired and wanting. We should stop, you whisper. I can't, he replies. And then not anymore. Your heart echoes the words before your lips do. I can't either. For the first time, you lean in, not for a kiss, but for closeness. Your forehead rests against his chest. You listen to the rhythm of his breath, the warmth of his body beneath wool and linen. It is the closest you have ever come to rest. When you part, you do not speak of next time. But you both know it will come, and that knowledge is both a blessing and a sentence. Because no garden wall is high enough to keep desire hidden forever, and eventually someone will see what they already suspect. The whisper at the cloister gate. The cloister gate is not supposed to open for you, not unless the bishop visits, not unless a noblewoman seeks penance, not unless someone dies. But today it creaks, a sound sharp and slow like breath drawn through teeth. You look up from the herbs you are sorting in the apothecary chamber. Outside the small window, a dark figure slips through the arch, hooded, heavy, cloaked in damp wool. He doesn't see you, but you see the sigil on his shoulder, a sword coiled in a vine, the mark of a knight loyal to the city's bishop. You freeze. The monk sees him too, from the other end of the corridor. Your monk. His body stiffens, then steps back into shadow, but not before the knight's eyes flicker in his direction. Recognition, and then suspicion. That night during the meal, the abbess is quiet. Her spoon circles her broth endlessly. She looks not at you, but past you. Through you. You bow your head and pretend not to feel the world shift beneath your feet. The following morning, the scriptorium is empty. You wait. You wait long after the bell. You copy alone, slowly, rewriting a single line of the Magnificat again and again, though the ink begins to blur and your fingers grow cramped. He doesn't come, not even by vespers. You walk the cloister twice before dark. Nothing. The next day, you hear whispers in the cloister garden. Not yours, not his. Other monks, 2 of them, returned from Avignon too soon. Should have stayed in the field. Abbess watching closely now. You hear his name not spoken but implied, carried in the silence between words. He is being hunted, not with swords but with eyes. You lower your head and keep walking. That evening, just before compline, a novice slips a folded page under your cell door. You unfold it with trembling hands. It is not parchment. It is a torn edge of the Psalter. Your Psalter. The handwriting is his. Just one line. Midnight garden, God be merciful. The hours between now and midnight stretch like wire. You count every chime of the bell, every breath of candlelight, every soft whisper of habit against stone. When the abbey sleeps, you move. Bare feet, thick cloak, no light. You slip through the chapel past the altar through the side door. Into the garden. He's already there, waiting. His face is drawn, paler than usual, lips tight. They question me, he says, before you can even greet him. About us. He nods, but not directly. They never ask what they already suspect. You look around. The fog hangs low. The stones drip with dew. You ask the question you feared most. What now? He looks at you, truly looks, and for the first time he doesn't answer. Because he doesn't know. Because no vow prepared him for this. You sit beside him on the old garden bench. Your knees touch. He rests his hand over yours, trembling. You both listen to the distant drip of water from the chapel roof. It sounds like the ticking of something running out. Time. Grace. Hope. I used to believe he says finally that discipline made me holy. That sacrifice was enough. But now, his voice catches. Now I think love is the only thing that ever made me feel close to God. You don't speak, because if you do, your voice will shatter. But you press his hand tighter, and that is your amen. Before you part, he pulls something from his cloak. A tiny charm, worn smooth by time and fingers. A silver coin with a hole punched through, strung onto a thread of dark wool. It was my sister's, he says. Before she died, I carried it into battle. Now, he doesn't finish the sentence. He just ties it around your wrist, and it rests there cool and light like a promise not yet broken. You return to your cell through the chapel. You pause by the Virgin's statue. The candle is still burning. You kneel, not to repent, but to pray. For mercy, for courage, and for one more hour, just one more before someone else whispers your name at the cloister gate. The Psalter's final page. The Psalter is nearly complete now, each page more ornate than the last. The gold leaf catches the morning light in ways that make your eyes ache, and the ink smells of pressed walnuts and patience. You've worked on it for nearly a season, side by side with him until recently. Now you're finishing it alone. The quiet is heavier without his presence. Every time your quill scratches the parchment, it feels like echo rather than prayer. You run your hand over the final folio, the last blank page before the binding is closed forever. It waits for you, not for a psalm, but for a choice. You think of the coin on your wrist, his sister's charm, his past folded into yours. It dangles as you dip your quill, brushing the edge of the ink pot, and for a moment you pause. Not because your hand trembles, but because you're about to write something that isn't scripture. You begin with a line from memory, not Latin, not official. A line he whispered to you once under the pear tree. If love is silence, let us speak in shadows. You scribe it carefully in smaller letters along the inside edge of the binding, so it won't be noticed unless someone knows to look. A secret between you and the vellum, a secret no bell or vow can erase. Later that day he returns. You don't expect him. You're trimming the corners of the parchment when the scriptorium door opens. You freeze. He stands there, wind-bitten and pale eyes, tired but alive. You drop the shears, and you stand. He closes the door behind him and crosses the room slowly. When he speaks, his voice is low. They're sending me away. You knew this was coming, but the words still cut deeper than the blades you just dropped. To the priory near Avignon, he says, "Far from here, far from you." You nod, but your throat tightens. He steps closer. "I asked for it," he adds. You blink. Why? His eyes brim not with tears, but something harder to name. Because if I stayed, they'd punish you. He hands you something then. A folded page. From his own journal, you realize. Not monastic writing, but something raw. His voice unfiltered, written under moonlight. The first line stops your breath. "I loved her as I loved my vows completely, and knowing they might never love me back." You can't read the rest. Not yet. Because he's holding your face now. Not roughly, not in passion. Just reverently, as if committing it to memory. And then finally he kisses you. Once, softly. No hunger, just truth. The kind you cannot write in margins. When he pulls away, you taste salt. Your tears, his lips, the garden wind, everything. He turns to leave but pauses in the doorway. If you ever come south, he says, ask for Brother Alaric. Then he's gone. The next week passes in haze. The abbey returns to routine. You return to silence, but nothing is the same. The sisters notice, the abbess notices, the air itself notices, but no one speaks of it. Because nothing happened, and yet everything did. You deliver the completed psalter to the abbess with steady hands. She flips through the pages nodding, but then pauses. At the final folio, her eyes narrow. Who wrote this? You bow your head. I did, Mother. A beat of silence. Then she closes the book gently. Then may your silence be blessed, she says, and nothing more. Back in your cell, you finally read the page he left you. It is not long, but it is enough. Enough to carry with you through decades of solitude. Enough to remember that once in a garden behind walls, your heart beat louder than any bell. That night, you tie the silver coin tighter around your wrist and whisper his name once into the dark. Not in longing, but in thanks. Because not all love must end in exile. Some love you carry quietly. Like scripture, like scars, like hope. The sister who watched. She never spoke a word about it. Not during meals, not in the chapel, not even when your hands trembled or your eyes darted toward the door more often than the altar. But she saw. Sister Mara always saw. The quiet ones usually do. She was older than you by nearly 20 years. Once noble-born, they said daughter of a minor count who traded land for forgiveness and a daughter for silence. She took her vows not out of piety, but out of exile. And so she understood, more than the others. Perhaps more than you wish she did. You remember the first time you felt her watching? A flicker from the shadowed arch near the scriptorium door. She never lingered. But you saw the way her eyes followed your movements, not with judgment, but with knowing. That was weeks before the kiss, before the garden, before the torn page. Now with Brother Alaric gone, she steps closer, not in voice but in presence. She begins tending the garden with you, a silent companion. She asks for your help more often in the apothecary, though she's perfectly capable. You never protest, because in some strange way her presence soothes the aching hollowness that settled in the corners of your days. One evening, as you clean dried yarrow from the mortar, she speaks, casually, like she's commenting on the weather. You still wear the coin. Your hands freeze. You look down. The silver glints faintly under your sleeve. I do you say softly? She nods. And nothing more. But in that moment, something changes between you. She is no longer just the quiet observer. She is the keeper of your secret. Days pass. Autumn curls into winter. The garden closes under frost. The scriptorium grows colder. You find comfort in routine, in the predictability of bells, in the warm smell of vellum, in the gentle rhythm of ink across parchment. But your heart still beats to another cadence, a memory song, and Sister Mara hears it. You begin to talk more. At first only of safe things, the drying of herbs, the fineness of lambskin parchment, the peculiar way the new novice snores. But one afternoon, while sorting crushed violets, she looks at you and says, I once loved someone too. You stop mid-sift. She doesn't look up. It was not a monk. It was a girl from the village. I was 15. She brought me honey bread during Lent. You say nothing. She continues calm and steady. My father found out. I was in this abbey by Easter. Her fingers work without pause. I never saw her again. Silence. Then she looks up. And I still think of her when I smell honey. The words sit heavy in the air. You want to reach for her hand, but you don't. Instead, you nod and say, I still smell lavender. She smiles. That's all. No lesson, no penance, no warning. Just two women sitting in silence holding lives that never fully belong to them. That night you leave something in Sister Mara's cell. A sprig of dried lavender, tied with black thread. No note, just memory. When she finds it, she says nothing. But during Vespers, she squeezes your hand. Once, and lets go. Weeks later, the abbess summons you both. You worry at first. You wonder if something's been discovered. If a page was found. If someone spoke. But instead, she asks a favor. A commission has come from a nearby priory. A new psalter is needed. 2 scribes, 1 winter. You and Sister Mara are chosen. You accept, because work is steadying, and because Mara understands, not just your history, but the way it refuses to remain past. The work is slow. The snow thickens. You find a rhythm together, 2 women, 1 parchment, 1,000 unspoken truths. And as you write, you begin to notice something unexpected. Peace, not the dull quiet of grief, but the warm stillness of something settling, of memory being shaped into story, and story into meaning. On the last page of this new psalter, Sister Mara does something surprising. She writes 1 final line, in her own hand. Not scripture, but poetry. To love without voice is still to sing. You stare at it, then look at her. She shrugs gently. I never got to say it, she whispers. But maybe someone else will read it and feel a little less alone. You nod, because you understand. Because your own words are hidden between bindings too. And maybe they will be read, someday, by someone who needs them. The letter from Avignon. It arrives in spring. Folded in thick paper, tied with wax thread. The seal is simple, a branch and a sword pressed into faded red. Your hands shake before you even open it. You haven't seen his name in ink for months. You haven't let yourself hope. But here it is, Brother Alaric, written in his hand. You sit beneath the garden's pear tree to read it. The tree is blooming again, tiny white flowers falling like snow across your lap as you unfold the letter. His handwriting is rougher than you remember, sharper, more hurried, but still him. Still the same loops on his G's, still the same flourish on the cross of his T's, and still the same voice in every word. I do not know if this will reach you. I write it under candlelight between chants during a windstorm that keeps even the rats awake. The priory here is cold, high, and the bells ring like hammers, but I am alive, and I think of you with each ring. They've put me to work copying a heretic's confession. Strange irony, isn't it? I sit with his words for hours, copying a soul's downfall as if it were gospel. But what I really want to copy is your face. I've tried sketching you in the margins. The lines never do justice. You smile despite yourself. You press the paper to your chest. And breathe. I've told no one here about us. There is no us to speak of, not in ways they would accept. But I carry you anyway in my sleeve, in my spine, in the quiet after matins when the world feels hollow and holy. Do you still have the coin? You look down. It rests beneath your robes, tied still to your wrist with black wool. You whisper yes. The letter continues. If you answer this, send it under the name of Sister Marin. A merchant from Lyon passes through next month. He trades spices and sometimes memories. He'll know how to get it to me. But if you cannot write back, that's all right. I don't write expecting answers. I write because silence has teeth and I would rather my words find your hands than rot inside me. That line makes you stop. Because you too have rotted in silence before. And you too have found healing in stolen ink and hidden phrases. At the bottom of the letter, one final note. A line of verse. Some vows are carved in stone, but some are written in breath and they last longer. You trace the sentence with your fingertip. Then fold the letter carefully. Place it inside your psalter, not between the psalms, but beneath the blank page you never finished, where only you will know it lives. That night you write your reply, by candlelight, on paper thinner than allowed, using ink so faint it barely shows. You begin with his name, not brother, not sir, just his name, Alaric, and then like breath after holding it too long you write, I still smell lavender. You tell him about Sister Mara, about the pear tree blooming, about the psalter you're finishing, about the way the garden feels at dawn. You do not write about missing him. You don't need to. It hangs in every line, every comma, every space. Before sealing it, you do something bold. You kiss the corner of the paper, a gesture childish and wild and wholly yours. Then you fold it, tie it, and write, for the one who knew my silence and still stayed. The merchant arrives quietly the next week. You don't speak. You only pass the letter, tucked into a bundle of dried sage. He nods and disappears, like stories often do. Weeks pass, no reply, and yet you feel lighter, because even if no words come back, yours are no longer caged. They float now, carried by wind and prayer and parchment, and you know deep in the marrow of your vows that he read them. He always did. The day without bells. You wake to silence. No morning bells, no rustling habits in the corridor. No murmur of footsteps or whispered prayers. At first, you think you've missed it, that you've overslept, that something is wrong with you. But when you open your door and step into the hall, the hush remains. It is not your silence. It belongs to the abbey. The bell tower is empty. Its rope frayed and curled at the bottom of the stairs sways gently, though no wind stirs. You find Sister Mara in the refectory lighting a single candle. She does not look surprised, only tired. They found the body near the road, she says, not turning around. A lay brother. From the priory to the west, likely fever. You nod slowly, the dread pooling in your stomach like cold oil. No bells means morning, and morning means disruption. And disruption means uncertainty. The abbess declares a day of vigil. No work, no speaking, no song. Just stillness and prayer. You sit in the chapel beside Sister Mara. Your hands folded tightly in your lap, eyes fixed on the crucifix above the altar. But your thoughts drift elsewhere, to another crucifix in another priory, to the man who once knelt beside you and whispered psalms in the dark, to Alaric. Oh. You do not know if the fever is spreading, if it reached Avignon, if he is well, if he is gone. And with no bells, there is no rhythm to guide your day, only fear. You retreat to the herb cellar, not to work, but to breathe. The scent of rosemary and dried citrus still lingers there. You sit in the corner where the light barely touches and let your thoughts unravel like spools of silk. You picture his hands, the way they held the quill, the way they held yours, the way they trembled after that first forbidden kiss, as though they'd tasted heaven and fire all at once. You press your palm to your lips, as if the memory might return through skin. Outside, the garden sits still. Birds do not sing. Even the bees keep their distance. Nature itself seems to hold its breath. You step into the quiet and feel its weight settle on your shoulders like a second cloak. You kneel by the pear tree, touch the bark, whisper his name, Alaric, not in longing, not in desperation, but in reverence. Because even in uncertainty, you still believe in the truth of what passed between you. Later, Sister Mara joins you. She brings bread and a small cup of wine, a simple act of comfort, not communion. You sit beneath the tree like children hiding from storms. She says they'll test us again, all of us. Grief makes the church tighten its fists. You nod. They already have. She raises an eyebrow. You add, but they didn't catch what matters. She smiles faintly. No, they rarely do. The sun begins to set. Still no bells. The sky is a soft, bruised blue. You think of the psalters, of the pages you filled, the secrets tucked between the margins, the prayers no one will recognize. You think of the letter, the coin, the kiss, All the pieces of a life never quite lived and yet deeply real. More real, perhaps, than vows made before you understood what the heart could bear. You write nothing that night, but you light a candle in your cell and sit beside it, watching it flicker, like the bell rope in the tower, like the fragile thread between two souls stretched across distance and silence and time. When the candle burns low, you whisper, "May he be safe." And for the first time in days, you let yourself sleep, not with fear, but with hope, because silence may come, but bells always return, even if they ring in another country, another cloister, another heart. When bells return, they ring at dawn, slow at first, almost unsure, then stronger, full-bodied, echoing across the courtyard like a breath finally released after days underwater. You jolt upright in your cell robe, askew hair tangled from restless sleep. But you don't fix it. You run, bare feet against cold stone, faster than you have moved since the day you arrived here, because bells mean news. And news in times like these is rarely neutral. The refectory is humming, quietly but urgently. A courier arrived just before sunrise, soaked through from a week-long ride. He bears a letter, marked not with a seal, but a line of red thread looped through the fold, a monk's sign that it was meant for a cloistered eye. Meant for you. The abbess does not speak as she hands it over, only watches, her face unreadable. Your fingers fumble with the knot, but eventually the thread comes loose. You unfold the parchment with shaking hands. It is from Sister Melisenda. You don't recognize the name at first, until she writes, "We met once briefly in Avignon. You were in the garden and you wore a coin at your wrist. I am writing to tell you something I believe you deserve to know. Brother Alaric is alive." You gasp, pressing the parchment to your chest before continuing. "He fell ill. Fever struck the priory 2 months past. Many passed. He nearly joined them. But he lived. He is not permitted to write yet. His voice has not returned and his hands shake too much to hold a pen. But he asked me to send this message word for word." You hold your breath and read. "Tell her, I saw her in the firelight. She looked back. She always looked back." Tears blur your vision. You close your eyes and try to picture him pale, fevered, perhaps thinner than when you last saw him, but alive. Alive and still thinking of you. Still sending words even when he cannot speak them himself. Sister Melisenda writes a few lines more. If you reply, send your letter as before. The merchant still passes through monthly. He keeps your last letter folded in his psalter near the binding. He reads it when his hands are steady. He said your words feel like a psalm. You do not know how long you sit there, the letter clutched to your chest like a relic. Eventually, Sister Mara finds you. You hand her the parchment without speaking. She reads it and nods. I'm glad, she says simply, and somehow that's enough. Later, back in the scriptorium, you take out a fresh piece of vellum. The others work quietly around you. But your thoughts are louder than the ink. You begin the letter slowly, deliberately. Dearest heart. You pause. Smile. Cross it out. Begin again. Dearest Alaric. You write of the bells, of the silence, of the vigil and the vigil's end, of the pear tree blooming again. You include a pressed petal folded between the pages. You write slowly as if savoring every syllable, not because you fear this might be the last, but because you know now deeply finally that it won't be. Before you seal the letter, you add a final line. Come back when you can hold a quill again. I'll keep a seat for you in the garden. Then, and if you cannot return, know that I carry you anyway. You kiss the parchment's edge like last time. But this time you add something more. A sketch. Just a simple one, of 2 figures beneath a tree, their hands nearly touching. Not quite, but close enough to believe in. Secrets in the margin. The new psalter is almost finished. Its pages are heavy with ink and time. Gilded vines curl across the borders, twining around verses that promise salvation, mercy, and eternal light. But what you love most are the margins, those narrow, overlooked spaces between holy lines, because that's where you've begun to hide the truth. It started as a whisper of mischief, a tiny flower drawn behind a capital letter, a silhouette of a bird perched beneath a line from the Psalms. Sister Mara saw it first. She said nothing, only nodded once as if to say, yes, this too is sacred. So you continued. You draw leaves that resemble the ones from your garden, a sprig of lavender beside a line about peace, the curve of a pear hidden in a page about Eden. No one notices, because no one really reads the margins, except those who know what to look for. One afternoon you add something bold, a coin, outlined in brown ink, suspended in a miniature garland of vines. You shade it just enough to gleam. No one else would see it as more than ornament, but he would know, because he gave it to you, because he wore it in battle. Because it once belonged to his sister and now belongs to your story. Sister Mara watches as you finish the folio. Her lips twitch into a smile. That's your heart there, she says. You nod. It's safer than leaving it in my chest. She snorts soft and fond. Maybe, but it's less fun to kiss. You laugh, really laugh. And for a moment, the weight of silence you've carried all winter lifts. That evening, you return to your cell and take out Alaric's letter again, the one from Sister Melisenda. You read it under candlelight, tracing the words with your fingers. She looked back. She always looked back. You think about the line, what it means, what it has always meant, that even when you walked away, even when you knelt in prayer or copied sacred texts, part of you remained with him, lingering like breath on glass. You never truly turned your back, and neither did he. You begin to dream again, not just of him, but of stories, of a place where letters don't have to hide, where vows aren't weighed against longing, where a nun might become something else, a writer perhaps, or a quiet voice tucked between pages, whispering truths to those who can't sleep. During one of your morning walks, you find a tiny bird's nest fallen from the pear tree. Inside 2 unbroken eggs. Perfect. Fragile. You bring it to the apothecary and keep it near your inks. You don't know why, only that it reminds you of love built in secret, held gently and always at risk of breaking. You write another letter. Not to send, just for yourself. You tuck it into your psalter under a blank page. It reads, "If you come back, I will not ask you to stay, but I will ask you to sit with me beneath the tree again, just once, just long enough to remind me this happened." You seal it with wax and no address, because some letters are not meant to travel, only to wait. As spring stretches into early summer, you grow bolder. You add a final touch to the psalter's closing page, a margin illustration of 2 monks walking beneath an arch. Their heads bowed, their hands nearly touching. The lines are fine, faint, hardly noticeable, but to those who've ever loved in silence, it will feel like thunder. You turn the page, begin a new one, fresh, unmarked, waiting, and somehow that waiting no longer feels like punishment. It feels like permission to continue, to remember, to believe, the visitor in disguise. It's nearly harvest time when the stranger arrives. He comes on foot, cloaked in dust, with the posture of someone accustomed to watching doorways more than entering them. The porter at the abbey gate asks for his business. He answers simply delivery. That much is true. He carries a satchel of herbs, wrapped scrolls, and folded vellum goods the abbey trades for prayers and psalters. But something in his eyes suggests more. A story tucked under the surface. A page not yet turned. See. You are in the scriptorium when Sister Mara enters, her expression unreadable. "There's someone asking for Sister Marin," she says. Your old code. The one used when messages came through the merchant from Lyon. Your heart flutters. Your hand holding the quill suddenly feels too large, too small, you can't tell. You stand slowly, brush ink from your fingers, and follow her. He's waiting in the courtyard near the fountain. At first you see only his cloak. Then he turns, and you see him. Alaric, thinner, yes. His face weathered, his beard fuller than it once was. But the same dark eyes, and the way they soften when they see you, that hasn't changed. He smiles. You forget how to breathe. "I'm not here for long," he says quietly, like wind through leaves. But I couldn't wait. You walk toward him, slow measured, as if afraid a single step too quick might wake you from a dream. "You shouldn't be here," you whisper, even as you reach for his hand. He takes yours. "I know," he says, "but I am." The abbess agrees to let him stay the night only in the guest quarters and only with strict silence. But she does not stop you from bringing him supper, nor does she ask questions when you carry 2 cups of wine instead of 1. That evening you sit in the apothecary together, cloaked in candlelight and shadows. He eats slowly, savoring every bite as if it were his first real meal in months. "I dreamt of this," he murmurs. You watch him. Not the food, not the candle, him. "I thought I forgot your voice," he adds, "but it came back the moment I saw your face." You reach across the table, brushing his wrist with your fingertips. "I was afraid you'd changed," you say. He laughs low and bittersweet. I have answers, but not in the ways that matter. He tells you stories of the priory, of monks lost to fever, of nights spent shivering beside empty beds, of copying texts that questioned everything he once believed. "I thought of leaving," he admits, "just walking away. But I didn't know where to go." You look at him and ask quietly, "Do you know now?" He doesn't answer, not with words, but his hand finds yours again, and this time he doesn't let go. You don't kiss, not this time. It's not needed. Instead, you sit in silence, the kind that no bell can break, the kind that feels like belonging. Before dawn, he prepares to leave. The sisters are still asleep. Even the crows are quiet. You walk him to the gate, your cloak drawn tight around your shoulders. He turns to you, pulls something from his pocket. It's your letter, the one you kissed months ago. He's kept it, folded, worn at the edges, but intact. I read it every week, he says. Even when I couldn't hold a pen. You smile through the tears. I'll write another, you whisper. He nods. I'll wait. Then he leans in and kisses your brow. Just once. A benediction. A promise. Then he's gone. Back through the fog. Back to the road. You remain at the gate long after he disappears from view. Not crying, not grieving, just steady. Because for the first time in a long while you do not feel torn. You feel chosen. And choosing. And whole. When you return to your cell, you light a candle and begin to write. Not a letter, not a psalm, just a memory for yourself, for him, for the margins, where the truest stories always live. The last psalm she ever writes. It begins with a feather. You find it on the steps outside the scriptorium one morning, pale gray with a white tip caught in a tuft of grass near the edge of the stone. It's from a dove, a quiet kind of bird rarely seen, even rarer heard. You pick it up gently, turn it between your fingers. And for reasons you don't fully understand, you take it back to your cell and place it inside your psalter between the pages you haven't written on yet. You don't know it then, but it will be the last time you add to it. The summer has cooled ever so slightly. The gardens are heavy with fruit and the bees have grown slow from sweetness. Life in the abbey returns to its quiet circular rhythm. Chants, ink, meals, prayer, silence. But something within you has shifted. You feel it each time you dip your quill in ink. Each time your fingers curl around a page. You are still here, still a nun, still cloaked in rules and rituals. But your heart beats somewhere else now. In the margins, in the echoes of a kiss on your brow. You begin to write a new psalm. Not for the abbess, not for any commission. Just for yourself. It has no number, no canonical shape, only a voice. Yours. You call it the Psalm of the Garden. It starts like this. Blessed be the tree that blooms in secret. Blessed be the hands that dared to touch. Blessed be the silence that held us like a cradle. Sister Mira finds you writing it one day. She doesn't interrupt. She simply sits nearby, threading dried clover into a loop, humming an old tune from her childhood, one she says her mother sang when the rain wouldn't come. After a while, she says softly, "You're ready." You look up. Ready for what? She shrugs. To begin or end, whichever this is. You nod, because you understand. Sometimes the end is just the start of the unwritten. The psalm grows. It doesn't follow any structure. It flows like water, winding around the truths you were never allowed to speak. I have kissed without permission. I have prayed while holding a memory. I have fasted on the taste of a name. You stop, breathe, press your hand to the page as if it were a living thing. And maybe in some way it is. When you finish, it is near midnight. The stars are thick outside, clustered like candle flames across the dark. You carry the psalm to the apothecary. Place it in a small wooden box with lavender and rosemary and the tiny feather. You seal it with wax, not for hiding, but for safekeeping. You don't know if anyone will read it. You don't write it for them. You write it because it needed to exist. And now it does. The next morning, you return to your usual duties. You tend the herbs. You smile at the novices. You mend a torn page, someone smeared with rainwater and regret. You are calm, but you are not empty. You are full of quiet knowing, of peace forged through longing, of love not lessened by absence. And then one afternoon, just before the leaves begin to fall again, you find a letter. It waits for you in the hollow of the pear tree wrapped in waxed cloth. No seal, just a simple note in a hand you know by heart. I can write again. It's all he says, and all you need. You return to your cell, sit by the window, pick up your quill, and begin one more letter. Not to send, but to sing. Just like your psalm, just like your silence, just like every moment he gave you permission to feel something outside the rules. You write, I will meet you again even if only in a story. But for now I remain the woman who still smells lavender and still looks back. When you're done, you don't sign it. You don't need to. Because he already knows. Because you've written yourself into the margins of this world. And that is where you will stay. Unforgotten, unbound, unwritten, and yet forever read. The last rule she breaks. The rule is simple, never leave the walls without permission. It's written in the Abbey's oldest books, etched into the foundation as deeply as any prayer. But you've always known that the holiest rules are not the ones carved in stone. They're the ones etched in longing. And longing has always pulled you east toward the edge of the forest where the abbey's land ends and the world begins. You wake before dawn. The stars are still out dimming slowly as if reluctant to leave the night behind. You dress in silence. No habit. Just a simple cloak and sandals worn soft with time. You carry nothing with you except a folded page, his last letter, and a pouch of dried lavender tucked inside your sleeve. At the gate, Sister Mara waits. She says nothing, only nods once, then turns back into the mist. You cross the field before the sun rises. The dew clings to your hem. A rabbit darts past your foot. The earth is soft as if it too has loosened its grip for a moment. You follow the path through the trees past the creek up the slope where wild fennel grows. This is the road he once took to reach you. Now it's your turn. At the ridge you find him. Not in a dramatic pose, not in armor or candlelight. Just seated on a stone sketching. He hears your steps before he sees your face. And when he looks up, it's as if time has paused to listen. He stands, drops the charcoal, forgets the page, and walks to you. There is no embrace. Not yet. Instead, you reach for his hands. Study them. The slight tremor is still there, the aftertaste of illness. You press your palms to his and breathe. I shouldn't be here, you whisper. He nods. But I'm glad you are. You sit together under the old pine where the roots knot like questions. He tells you about the priory, how the new abbot is less cruel, more curious. How fewer brothers are dying now. How he's begun illustrating again. You tell him about the psalm, about the feather, about the silence that no longer hurts. You don't speak of the future, not exactly. But you speak of seasons, of patience, of love that doesn't ask to be declared, only lived. He pulls something from his satchel, a square of vellum. On it a sketch. 2 hands nearly touching beneath a pear tree. You laugh. I drew the same thing. He smiles, but this time it reaches his eyes. I know, I saw it in my dream. You don't ask what happens next, because the now is enough. The sun rises. Birdsong begins. And for the first time in a long while, you do not feel the weight of rules pressing on your skin. You feel only warmth and choice, and the soft knowledge that you can return not because you must, but because your heart still belongs to both places. Before you leave, you reach into your sleeve and pull out a sprig of lavender. You tuck it behind his ear like a blessing. He leans his forehead to yours. And this time you kiss him. Soft, brief, sacred. Then you whisper, thank you for teaching me how to break rules without breaking myself. You return to the abbey with dirty sandals and a heart full of fireflies. No one asks where you went, but Sister Mara hands you a bowl of soup with extra herbs. And the abbess says your handwriting has improved. You don't answer. You only smile and begin to copy the next psalm. But this time you leave more space in the margins, just in case someone else one day needs a place to hide the truth. The vow she keeps. It's been a year. 12 full cycles of moonlight on the cloister walls. 12 harvests of lavender and sage. 12 letters sent and received, folded, hidden, kissed. And still you remain, not out of fear, not from duty, but from a vow you made quietly beneath the pear tree one spring evening when his hand nearly touched yours. The vow was simple, to stay true to what you felt, no matter what path the world lays at your feet. And you have kept it, every day since. The abbey has changed, subtly like wind-shaping stone. New novices arrive with wide eyes and blistered feet. The abbess walks more slowly, her cane tapping out prayers in the halls. Sister Mara has taken over the garden entirely, and the thyme has never grown taller. Even the birds seem different, softer in their song, as if they too have begun to understand silence as something sacred. But you are the same, and not. You still write, but not just scripture, not just psalters and prayers. Now you write stories, small ones, folded into the corners of texts, hidden behind flourished letters and winding vines. Tales of monks who dream of pears, of women who find feathers on their pillows, of longing that lives in the sound between bell chimes. One story in particular you keep adding to. It begins with a girl who sees a man fall from a horse during a storm. She doesn't know his name, but she carries him to shelter, binds his wounds with her veil, and listens to him speak of faith and war, and the ache of not being seen. You haven't finished the tale yet. You're waiting, not for an ending, but for the right silence to place at its center. Because some stories aren't meant to end, only to be told again. There are nights when you sit by your candle and imagine his hand in yours, rough from charcoal, warm from ink. You imagine walking with him again through the orchard, not as sinners, Not as saints, just as people who once chose one another in a world that told them not to, and still do. He writes to you less now, not out of distance, but out of comfort. The words no longer carry desperation. They carry peace. I saw 2 swallows nesting above the window today. They reminded me of your voice. The abbey finally allowed me to teach again. The students are dreadful at Latin, but excellent at laughter. Do you still keep rosemary in your sleeves? I swear I can smell it on the parchment. You smile every time. You write back when the stars are thickest, because love you've learned is not measured by proximity. It's measured by what you tend even when no one is watching. One evening, as you prepare to blow out your candle, a novice knocks on your door. She's nervous holding a psalter you copied weeks ago. She points to a tiny image in the corner, a woman and a man beneath a tree, their hands almost but not quite touching. Is this from a real story, she asks? You hesitate, then nod. Yes, you whisper. It's all real. She stares at the image, eyes wide. I think I'd like to hear it one day. You smile. And in that moment, you feel the vow settle deeper into your bones. You will keep it. Not just for him, not just for yourself, but for anyone who's ever loved in silence and dared to speak anyway. That night you don't write. You walk, barefoot in the garden. The pear tree is blooming again. You stand beneath it and breathe in the scent of spring and memory. Then softly you say his name into the dark. Not out of longing, but gratitude for the wound that taught you wonder, for the story you lived inside, for the vow you still keep to write your heart into the margins of every holy thing. Forever. You lie still now. The candlelight has long since faded, leaving only the soft hush of night wrapped around your ears like linen. Somewhere far away a bell may still toll, but here it's quiet. And in that silence the story lingers like the last trace of lavender on a worn sleeve, or a kiss pressed to the fold of a letter never meant to be sent. You've wandered through cloisters and candlelit halls. You've waited by pear trees and whispered your secrets to pages too sacred to speak. You've felt the ache of love that cannot be named, and the peace of knowing it existed all the same. Now let it all rest. Let the garden close its petals. Let the ink dry on the final psalm. Let your breath slow in and out, soft and steady like footsteps echoing through the halls of memory. You are safe. You are not alone. You are the keeper of stories of vows whispered in hidden corners of margins where truth takes root and blooms in silence. Let your shoulders sink just a little deeper. Let your eyes close heavy and full. You don't need to think anymore. You don't need to remember. Just feel the warmth of the story still cradling you. Gently, quietly, until all that remains is breath. And sleep. And the soft promise that love once chosen never truly leaves. It waits. It watches. And tonight it rests beside you. End of script. Thanks for letting us be part of your night. Sleep well, dream safe. And we'll see you in the next sleepy story.